The private family estate erupted into applause. More than 1,000 bankers, luxury family office executives, old money billionaires, politicians, and international investors filled the historic estate ballroom. Tonight wasn't just another celebration. It was the Hawthorne Family Legacy Gala. At the center of the room, Ethan Carter stood quietly in a simple navy suit. For 15 years, he believed his wife, Claire Carter, came from an ordinary middle-class family. He never asked about her past, and she never told him. Claire slowly stepped onto the stage. She smiled, not at Ethan, but at the family patriarch standing beside her. "My journey begins tonight." Thunderous applause echoed. Then, she looked toward Ethan. Her expression softened. "I'm sorry. I should have told you the truth." Before Ethan could answer, the elderly patriarch raised an ancient silver key. "From this moment, the Hawthorne family fortune officially belongs to Claire Hawthorne." The ballroom exploded with applause. Ethan quietly smiled, walked toward Claire, placed his wedding ring in her hand, then whispered, "You never had to choose between love and your family." He turned around and walked away without looking back. No argument, no anger, no questions, only silence. Claire stood frozen, because she had expected him to beg, to fight, to stay. Instead, he left with nothing, completely unaware that she had secretly spent the last 3 years preparing to give every dollar of the family fortune to him. 24 hours earlier, Ethan Carter wasn't preparing for a billionaire family gala. He wasn't thinking about wealth, and he certainly wasn't expecting his marriage to quietly end before the next sunset. He was standing inside a small marine restoration center overlooking Charleston Harbor, South Carolina. The building wasn't impressive. Weathered wooden walls, old fishing maps, saltwater tanks, research tables covered with coral samples. Volunteers cleaned rescued sea turtles. Marine biologists prepared boats for another conservation mission. Nothing about the place suggested that the quiet man walking through its doors managed one of America's fastest-growing environmental engineering companies. As Ethan entered, everyone smiled. "Morning, Mr. Carter." He smiled back. "Morning, everyone." No security, no expensive office, no assistants carrying tablets. Only respect. A teenage volunteer hurried toward him carrying a small notebook. "Mr. Carter, I finally finished the water filtration design." Ethan stopped. "Let's see." The teenager opened the notebook. Simple drawings, handwritten calculations, affordable materials, a purification system designed for small coastal towns. Ethan carefully studied every page, then smiled. This could help thousands of families. The boy's face lit up. "You really think so?" "I know so." Several volunteers exchanged smiles. One elderly scientist quietly whispered, "He owns companies all over the country. But every Friday, he's still here." Ethan overheard. He simply smiled. Helping people had always mattered more than being noticed. Across the room, a television suddenly switched to live business news. The anchor smiled confidently. "Tomorrow evening, the legendary Hawthorne family will host its annual Legacy Gala." The screen changed. A massive private estate appeared. Historic stone mansion, luxury gardens, international guests arriving by private helicopter. The reporter continued, "Sources believe family heiress Claire Hawthorne will make a historic announcement during tomorrow night's celebration." Several volunteers glanced toward Ethan. None of them knew Claire Hawthorne was Ethan's wife. To everyone around him, she was simply Claire Carter, a quiet woman who worked for a nonprofit education foundation. Even Ethan believed that. He reached for the remote, turned the television off. Silence returned. Back to work. Everyone immediately smiled and continued working. His phone vibrated. "Claire." He answered. "Hey." Her voice sounded softer than usual. "Where are you?" "At the harbor. You promised we'd have lunch today." He looked at his watch. "I know. We rescued another injured sea turtle this morning." A long silence followed. Then she quietly asked, "Do you ever wish your life had been different?" Ethan smiled. "I like my life. I wasn't talking about work." She hesitated. "I meant, if one day you discovered everything you believed about me wasn't true." Ethan frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" She quickly changed the subject. "Nothing. I'll see you tonight." Before he could ask another question, she ended the call. Ethan stared at the silent phone. For the first time, something about Claire's voice felt unfamiliar. Not distant, heavy, as if she had been carrying something alone for a very long time. That afternoon, Ethan drove across historic Charleston. Not toward his corporate office, not toward a luxury restaurant. Instead, he stopped at a small family-owned bookstore near the harbor. Mrs. Collins, the 70-year-old owner, smiled warmly. "Ethan, you came for the anniversary gift?" He nodded. "The same tradition." She walked toward a wooden shelf, pulled out a leather-bound journal. "Handmade, simple, elegant. No diamonds this year?" she teased. Ethan laughed. "Claire likes memories more than jewelry." Mrs. Collins wrapped the journal carefully. "I hope she still smiles the way she used to." Ethan quietly looked toward the window. "So do I." As evening approached, he finally drove home. Their waterfront house overlooked the Atlantic. Beautiful, peaceful, comfortable. But lately, it no longer felt peaceful. Inside, suitcases stood near the staircase. Elegant evening dresses hung inside garment bags. Several unopened boxes rested beside the dining table. Claire stood quietly in the living room, looking out toward the ocean. She didn't notice Ethan enter. He gently held out the wrapped journal. "Happy anniversary." She slowly turned, looked at the gift, then at Ethan. Her eyes immediately filled with emotion. "You still remembered." "I always remember." For a brief moment, she looked as though she wanted to tell him everything. Every secret, every lie, every hidden chapter of her life. Instead, she forced a small smile. "Thank you." She hugged the journal tightly against her chest, then quietly whispered, "I'm so sorry, Ethan." He looked at her with concern. "For what?" She opened her mouth, but before she could answer, her phone rang. The screen displayed only one name. "Grandfather." Claire froze. She slowly answered. "Hello." An elderly voice spoke calmly. "The family jet leaves tomorrow morning. No more delays. The Hawthorne name must finally come home." Claire closed her eyes. "I understand." She ended the call. Neither of them realized that by tomorrow night, one secret would destroy one marriage and reveal a fortune neither of them truly understood. The following morning, Charleston woke beneath a blanket of soft gray clouds. Inside the waterfront house, silence filled every room. Claire stood in the kitchen holding a cup of untouched coffee. She hadn't slept, not even for an hour. Across the room, Ethan quietly prepared breakfast, exactly the way he always did. Fresh fruit, toast, coffee, nothing fancy, just routine. He smiled gently. "You look tired." Claire forced a smile. "I couldn't sleep." Ethan nodded. "Me neither." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Claire looked at him. "Ethan, if someone you loved had been hiding something for years, would you ever forgive them?" He thought carefully before answering. "I'd want to know why they hid it." His answer surprised her. Not because it was kind, because it was exactly who he had always been. Before she could say another word, a black luxury SUV quietly stopped outside. Then another, and another. 3 identical vehicles. Men in dark suits stepped out. One elderly gentleman walked toward the front door. Perfect posture, silver hair, tailored black suit, white gloves. He knocked once. Claire closed her eyes. "They're here." Ethan looked confused. "Who?" She quietly opened the door. The elderly man bowed respectfully. "Miss Hawthorne, the family requests your presence." Ethan frowned. "Hawthorne?" The man looked toward Ethan for the first time. His expression remained professional. "Sir." Then, nothing more. No explanation. No greeting. Only silence. Claire finally spoke. "My grandfather sent them." Ethan looked at her. "I thought your grandfather passed away years ago." She slowly lowered her eyes. "I lied." Those two words echoed through the house. Ethan didn't interrupt. Claire continued. "My real last name isn't Carter. It's Hawthorne. The Hawthorne family owns one of the oldest private investment groups in America." Another silence. "I was born into that family. But I left 12 years ago." Ethan struggled to understand. "You never told me." "I know. I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "That you'd see the money before you saw me." He looked at her quietly. "I married you, not your bank account." Tears filled her eyes. "I know. And that's what made hiding it even harder." Outside, the chauffeur checked his watch. "Miss Hawthorne, the helicopter is waiting." Claire looked toward Ethan. "I have to go." He nodded slowly. "Then go." She searched his face. No anger. No accusations. Only disappointment. That hurt even more. Before leaving, she reached into her handbag, removed a small silver key. "I want you to keep this." Ethan looked at it. "What's it for?" She smiled sadly. "If everything goes wrong today, you'll understand." He accepted the key without asking another question. She had never given him a reason not to trust her. Moments later, the convoy disappeared toward the private airfield. Ethan remained standing on the porch, watching until the last vehicle vanished. His phone vibrated. His longtime business partner, Daniel Foster. "Morning. Ethan. I've got something strange." "What happened?" "A law firm from New York has been trying to contact you since dawn. They said it's urgent." Ethan frowned. "What law firm?" "Hawthorne and Blackwell." The same name. Again. Daniel continued. "They refused to explain anything. They only said, Mr. Carter's signature may determine today's outcome." Ethan looked down at the silver key in his hand. Nothing made sense anymore. Across the state, the Hawthorne private estate buzzed with activity. Luxury cars filled the circular driveway. Florists arranged thousands of white roses. Security teams prepared every entrance. Family office executives reviewed legal documents. Inside the historic mansion, Claire walked through enormous marble hallways she hadn't seen in over a decade. Every portrait, every chandelier, every polished staircase reminded her why she had left. At the end of the hallway, the massive library doors slowly opened. An 83-year-old man stood beside the fireplace. Edward Hawthorne, founder of the Hawthorne family empire. He looked at Claire. "You came." She nodded. "I promised I would." Edward slowly handed her a thick leather folder. "The succession documents." She didn't touch them. "I haven't agreed." "You will." His voice remained calm. "The family fortune requires one final signature." Claire looked directly into his eyes. "I have one condition." Edward raised an eyebrow. "What condition?" She answered without hesitation. "My husband comes before this family." The old billionaire remained silent. Then, for the first time in years, he smiled, very slightly. "Tonight, we'll see if he believes the same." The Hawthorne family estate had never looked more magnificent. Crystal chandeliers illuminated the historic ballroom. A live string orchestra played softly. More than 1,000 family office executives, private bankers, old money billionaires, politicians, and international investors filled the grand hall. Tonight wasn't simply another gala. It was the official Hawthorne legacy ceremony. Outside, a simple black SUV quietly stopped at the estate entrance. Ethan Carter stepped out. He wore the same navy blue suit he had worn for years. No luxury watch, no designer label, no security detail, only quiet confidence. Several reporters immediately recognized him. "Mr. Carter, are you attending the Hawthorne ceremony?" Another shouted, "Is it true your wife belongs to the Hawthorne family?" Ethan smiled politely. "I'm here because my wife asked me to come." Nothing more. Nothing less. He quietly walked inside. Across the ballroom, Claire Hawthorne stood surrounded by family members. She wore an elegant ivory evening gown. A sapphire necklace rested around her neck. She looked every bit like the heiress everyone had talked about for years. Beside her stood Edward Hawthorne. Calm, proud, confident. He quietly asked, "Have you made your decision?" Claire looked across the ballroom. Her eyes found Ethan, standing alone near the entrance. She softly answered, "I already have." Edward nodded. "We'll soon find out." Neither of them noticed several family attorneys carrying sealed leather folders toward the stage. The evening began. Guests exchanged greetings. Private bankers discussed investments. Photographers captured every arrival. Crystal glasses reflected beneath the chandeliers. To everyone else, everything appeared perfect. Only Claire knew the hardest decision of her life would happen before the night ended. An hour later, the master of ceremonies stepped onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we celebrate another chapter in the Hawthorne legacy." Thunderous applause filled the ballroom. Edward slowly walked onto the stage. Claire followed him. Television cameras focused on them. The orchestra became silent. Edward smiled proudly. For more than 100 years, the Hawthorne family has protected its legacy. Our wealth, our responsibility, and our future. Another round of applause. Then, he looked toward Claire. "My granddaughter left this family 12 years ago." Whispers spread across the ballroom. Edward continued, "She chose love over inheritance." More whispers. Claire lowered her eyes. Edward slowly reached into a velvet case, removed an old silver family key, the symbol of Hawthorne leadership. He held it high. "Tonight, the Hawthorne fortune returns to its rightful heir." The ballroom erupted into applause. Claire accepted the key, but instead of smiling, she looked toward Ethan, standing quietly near the back. Her eyes filled with emotion. She slowly stepped away from the stage, walked through the crowd, stopped directly in front of him. The ballroom gradually became silent. She reached into her handbag, pulled out a sealed envelope, then whispered, "I should have told you the truth years ago." Ethan looked at her calmly. "I know." Tears rolled down her face. "I never wanted you to think I married you because of money." He gently smiled. "I never did." She swallowed hard. "My family told me no man would stay if he knew who I really was." Ethan quietly looked at the silver family key in her hand, then back into her eyes. "I would have stayed anyway." Claire's voice trembled. "I know that now." She slowly placed the envelope into his hands. Inside were documents transferring control of the Hawthorne Family Foundation to Ethan. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "I wanted us to build something together." Before Ethan could answer, Edward slowly walked toward them. The ballroom watched in complete silence. The elderly billionaire stopped only a few feet away. He looked directly at Ethan, then calmly asked, "Mr. Carter, if accepting this fortune meant losing the simple life you built, would you still take it?" Every camera turned toward Ethan. Every guest waited. Even Claire held her breath. Ethan slowly looked around the magnificent ballroom. The priceless paintings, the historic family crest, the billionaires, the fortune. Then, he quietly closed the envelope, handed it back to Claire, and softly said, "I married my wife, not her inheritance." The entire ballroom fell silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Edward Hawthorne stared at Ethan for several long seconds. Then, for the first time that evening, the old billionaire smiled, very slowly, because at that exact moment, he realized the man everyone believed had come for the Hawthorne fortune was the only person who truly deserved it. The ballroom remained completely silent. Edward Hawthorne slowly stepped closer to Ethan. The old billionaire looked directly into his eyes. Then, without saying a word, he took the silver family key from Claire's hand. Everyone expected him to place it back into the family vault. Instead, He placed it into Ethan's hands. Gasps echoed across the ballroom. Claire looked stunned. The board members exchanged confused looks. Edward finally spoke. For 12 years, I believed my granddaughter made the biggest mistake of her life. He paused. I was wrong. He turned toward the audience. I spent decades searching for someone worthy of protecting this family's legacy. I searched among billionaires, corporate leaders, politicians. I never thought I would find that person in an ordinary man. The ballroom erupted into whispers. Edward raised one hand. Silence returned. The Hawthorne fortune was never meant to create wealthy people. It was meant to create responsible people. He looked back at Ethan. And tonight, you proved something every wealthy family eventually forgets. Wealth reveals character. It never creates it. Thunderous applause filled the ballroom. Claire stood frozen. Tears streamed down her face. Everything she had feared, everything she had hidden, had disappeared in a single moment. Edward accepted another black leather folder from the family's chief attorney. He opened it. Ladies and gentlemen, I have one final announcement. The ballroom became quiet once again. The Hawthorne Family Trust will remain under Claire Hawthorne's ownership. Claire looked surprised. But, Edward continued, effective immediately, Ethan Carter has been unanimously appointed as chairman of the Hawthorne Family Foundation. More applause echoed through the ballroom. Edward smiled proudly. The foundation controls every scholarship, every children's hospital, every coastal restoration project, and every community investment funded by our family. He handed the folder to Ethan. I cannot think of anyone better to lead it. Ethan accepted the folder quietly. I'll honor that responsibility. Edward nodded. I know you will. Claire slowly walked toward Ethan. She gently held his hand. I'm sorry. I should have trusted you. Ethan looked at her with kindness. You should have trusted us. Those words broke the last wall around her heart. She quietly rested her forehead against his shoulder. Not because of the fortune, not because of the applause, but because, for the first time in years, there were no more secrets between them. The guests stood together, not to celebrate money, but to celebrate something much rarer. Trust. 1 year later, the Hawthorne Family Foundation looked completely different. Hundreds of scholarship students graduated every year. Abandoned neighborhoods became thriving communities. Historic coastal towns received clean water systems. Marine conservation projects expanded across the East Coast. Children's hospitals opened new research centers. Every project carried one small inscription. Built with purpose. Business magazines repeatedly asked Ethan for interviews. He politely declined every one. Television producers offered documentaries. He declined those too. Instead, every Friday morning, he returned to the same marine restoration center overlooking Charleston Harbor. The volunteers smiled as he walked through the doors. Little Emma, the same girl who once dreamed of building homes, ran toward him holding a new drawing. Mr. Carter, I got accepted into architecture school. Ethan smiled proudly. I never doubted you. She looked up. My teacher says your family could buy half the coastline. Ethan laughed softly. Maybe. She frowned. Then why do you still spend every Friday here? Ethan looked toward the harbor. Sea turtles slowly returned to the ocean. Volunteers worked together. Children laughed nearby. Claire quietly joined him, taking his hand. He smiled, then answered, because fortunes build wealth, but honesty builds families. Claire squeezed his hand. This time, she wasn't hiding her name. She wasn't hiding her past. She wasn't hiding her future. Together, they quietly watched another rescued sea turtle disappear into the Atlantic. Because the greatest inheritance was never the Hawthorne fortune. It was finding someone who loved you before they ever knew your name.